Hey there everyone, this is Beth, and this is what I ended up doing for Imbolc. As a solitary practitioner, and someone who was with a group that Imbolc was basically, we got together and hung out. They were kind of our social party time, or doing things that were fun but needed to be done, unlike working with the full moon, which was our very ritual working. So as a solitary, coming out of that kind of tradition of it's a time to meet up and have some fun, in not having a close community where I currently live, I struggle with celebrating the Wheel of the Year. Rituals, unless there's a really big reason for me to do it, just kind of feel big and difficult to do. And so I'm really been looking for ways to observe this in my life in a way that works for me. And this, working in the art journal, is one way that feels really natural. And having fun with it and not being like, oh, I have to follow this theme of blah and blah because it's Imbolc and breed and whatever. The Return of the Light. And the Return of the Light did become the theme for this spread eventually. I'm working with some collage elements at this point, and really the first ones I put down, I just like the pattern and the colors. So that's what I used. And I'm working with a pencil here because things are really wet and I don't want to ruin my pen, any of my pens or markers. So using a pencil. So if things are wet, go for the pencil. You can sharpen it. It'll be okay later. Gluing some stuff down, gluing down my focal point. She becomes my main element. And paint over collage is a really easy way, if you're freaked out by doing faces, to do some faces in an easy way. You can paint over them or, leave them fairly unintegrated. It really depends on what you want. There was a big bubble under her nose, and normally I'm not really concerned about bubbles, but when the face right in the middle of it was too much for me. And at that point, I accidentally smudged the collage and create a hole in her face. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. The light's coming through. What's that? Is it Cohen song where the cracks or where the light gets through? Kind of concept. But when I work, especially in my art journal, I like it to be about play. I like it to be about experimentation and not being caught up in what's going to happen. What is this going to turn into in the end? I have a slight idea of what's going on, but I don't really know. And at this point, I applied I think it's called a Watercolor Ground or something like that, and let that dry. I just got back from my workout at this point in time, and what the Watercolor Ground does is let you put watercolors easily over things like a collage or substances that are not paper. It doesn't respond exactly like paper, but it does create really cool effects, especially when you're using it over like a collage item. Simply the act of painting the absorbent ground or the face starts to change it from a kind of a photograph thing into something a little more ghostly, fairy-esque, and surreal. And I like that aspect of it, even if you did nothing else to this painting, to her face in this art journal spread, but put that ground over it, you would get a cool effect. But I want to take it a step further because I want to make that collage element mine. And here I'm playing around with several items that I'm not sure are going to make it in or not. Going for a more surreal kind of thing, like the mirror is the head of the lady holding the flowers. And that's one thing you can do with collage. It's really easy to audition things, and that makes it fun. If you're unsure which way you're going, how you want to do it, you don't have to glue it on. You can sit it down there and say, hey, what happens? What happens to when I do this? Okay. Yes. And all of a sudden, like, I haven't touched anything, and the Epson thing for ink came on. I'm like, okay. I don't know what you're on. But it is the shadow of Mercury retrograde why I am editing this. So who knows? Yeah. Collage is just fun. And you can, the more weird you go with your collage, I find the more cool it looks. And in this case, I'm modifying her to be a bit more fiery and bringing the hair down. This palette I'm using is, I think it's Sargent brand. It was, I think, under 10 bucks. It's allegedly watercolor, but it's really kind of more of a gouache. It's a little more opaque. And I really like it in the context of mixed media quite a bit. I would repurchase it, even though it's not like a pure watercolor. It tends to be a little chalky when you just use it on your own. But I've used it in other things it has great colors. So I've made collage elements out of it and stuff like that. I'm at the point where I'm like, I need some light. And I've glued down my mirror. I've decided my mirror is what I'm going with. And using that, trying to figure out what I'm doing with the face a little bit. She would have been fine, but it's always more fun to take things further. And now I'm working with this concept of fire, of creating, well, like a fire tree, which doesn't stay this way. Don't be afraid to play. See what happens when you do something. It's just an art journal. You can change it. You just keep painting until you like it. Or, you get bored of it. One of the two. Or it says it's done. Sometimes things will be really quite undone and be like, we're done. Ta-da! And you're like, yay. But working with this concept of fire coming out of this corner is... The theme ends up being fire released. It started out as fire released within, and then and the words that really just kept coming over and over again was fire release. So that ended up going with that theme in the end. And I just put some of that watercolor ground over that collage piece in the mirror, and I had too much orange ink there, ready orange ink. So I blotted it with some masa that I will later use for collage. At this point in my art, I use everything from craft paints on up to artist quality. They all have different ways of reacting to things. So sometimes you want the opacity that craft paint tends to bring in compared to, say, something like a golden fluid, which even their opaque colors tend to be a bit transparent. Working on making the mirror mine, working on the hand a little bit, not doing too much, just bringing it into line with more the face and the piece of art. In the mirror at this point, I'm not real happy too. It turned out darker than I was hoping for, but yeah, it worked out in the end. So, and here's where I decide I'm going to take that fire kind of around that mirror area and see where that takes me. And keeping in mind that there's a lot going on here, and leaving that one corner with the fire empty of kind of movement stuff, and leaving the pseudo body, that darker area, blank too, helped balance out all the movement that's going on here. And I'm like, oh my god, it's too white. So I brought some more of that ink. And the great thing about inks too is that you can draw with the little stoppers. I really like the Dollar Rowney inks, and the Golden High Flow is the best so far. And here I'm working on how I want my words to be. And my craft paint is still pretty wet and everything's pretty juicy. So I'm at this point using my pencil to etch into that. And I wrote fire released. And at that point I walked away because everything was super wet. And you can see here, now here's the words, and still just getting the color right more than anything at this point. But this felt like a really nice piece for Imbolc for me, of bodying that fire within and the creativeness that I have, and my inner fire that for a lot of years I kind of tamped down. I tried not to let it out, and working on finding ways to release the passion and anger and all those kind of emotions that come with fire in a healthy way. And art journaling being one of them. I gotta say, I had a lot of fun creating this piece. This is an easy way to bring in an observance for whether it's the wheel of the year, moon energies, anything you're working on changing. It's an easy way to bring this kind of observance into your life and have some fun with it while you're doing it too. Things were just too wet and afraid I was going to smear them. And I want to go in with a black pen and do some outlining with the pen, so I don't want my acrylic wet because it will ruin my pen. Alrighty, everyone, have a wonderful day and go out there and be the love in the world. Bye-bye.